Just imagine getting fired, via text, during the French Open final no less, while sitting right next to your boss's biggest rival. That's exactly what happened to me, and trust me, it only got crazier from there. I got fired via text. No. Warning, no meeting, no polite corporate jargon. Just a cold 6-word message lighting up my phone during the final keynote at the European Strategy Forum in Paris. I was sitting next to the CEO of Viora, one of our fiercest competitors, discussing potential ESG alignment strategies. My phone buzzed. Effective immediately, your role is terminated. No subject line, no name, just that. I remember laughing because I thought it had to be a joke. It wasn't. The person behind that text? Riley Maddox, newly minted CEO of the firm I had helped build for the past 11 years. The same Riley I mentored straight out of Wharton. The same Riley I vouched for when he was caught underbilling a client 3 years ago. He had sat in my office crying about how he didn't know better. I did know better, but I protected him. That's on me. The kicker? They replaced me with Trevor Green. Trevor, a legacy brat whose only real skills include playing golf, with venture capitalists and quoting Steve Jobs during meetings like it's personality. His father holds 14% of our company's voting shares, which apparently counts for more than 2 decades of strategy wins and loyal client relationships. Trevor once asked me if margin was the same as profit. That's who got my job. I didn't cry. I didn't make a scene. But my hands were shaking so hard I had to excuse myself from the table. In the hotel bathroom, staring at the marble sink, I felt something worse than rage. Betrayal. Deep, bone-deep betrayal. Not just by Riley, but by a system I believed in. One that said hard work, results, and loyalty meant something. A system I had defended in boardrooms and late-night emails, in crisis meetings and quarterly reviews. And here I was, disposed of like expired inventory, while my mentee-turned-CEO and a nepotism mascot cashed in on my legacy. 11 years, gone. Not even a damn phone call. That was the moment I knew. They underestimated me. And that's always a mistake. For the first few days, I didn't say a word. Not online, not to colleagues, not even to my closest friends. I went dark. I told people I was taking time to recalibrate, which was just code for hiding in my apartment, wearing the same hoodie 3 days straight, binging old West Wing episodes and ordering in Thai food like clockwork. But beneath the silence, my mind was spinning, not with revenge, with questions. Who was I without the title? Without the corner office, the speaking slots, the quarterly war rooms? I had spent so long being Elena from Westbridge Strategies that I forgot what just Elena looked like. And then the messages started rolling in. First, a text from Derek, longtime client, notoriously no-nonsense, saying, "Tell me this is a joke. You were the only reason we stayed." Then 2 more emails, then 5, then a dozen. One from a startup CEO in Singapore who said, "Honestly, we followed your lead, not the firm's. You made the strategy make sense." A managing director from a biotech firm offered to loop me into their Q4 planning if I was consulting now. They weren't mad I was gone. They were mad at the company for letting me go. That shook something loose in me. Maybe I wasn't just a name on the org chart. Maybe I was the value. The final domino fell when Patricia called. Patricia, Riley's former assistant, the one who used to bring me matcha lattes before board meetings and had a memory like a steel trap. She sounded nervous, whispering like she was calling from inside a closet. She told me the whole thing was premeditated, that Riley had been forwarding my strategy decks to a private Gmail account for months, that Trevor's promotion was greenlit before my last performance review, that someone had flagged my upcoming client portfolio as at risk 2 weeks before I was fired, and that she'd seen Riley reassign my top clients to Trevor's team before HR even generated my termination letter. I hung up and just sat there. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't random. It was a hit job and it was personal. But the weird part, I didn't feel broken anymore. I felt awake. All those years I'd been building value, not for the brand, but for myself. They just helped me see it. They thought they'd buried me. Really, they just freed me. I didn't post a cryptic Instagram story. I didn't go on LinkedIn to air it all out in some passive-aggressive life update. I didn't even drunk text Riley, though let me tell you, I almost did at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday with a tequila in hand and a very long paragraph drafted in notes. But I didn't. Instead, I did something scarier. I shut up and got strategic. First, stop the employment contract. I'd signed it 5 years ago in a rush, barely skimming the non-compete clause because I was too excited about the corner office to care. Now I read every damn word, twice. Then 3 more times with a lawyer friend who owed me a favor from a botched wedding seating chart I once fixed for him. That's when we saw it, a loophole. The clause only applied to firms in the same sector, with a narrow radius and an expiration date of 6 months. Translation: if I shifted focus just slightly and kept things under wraps for a while, I could technically build something fresh without violating a single thing. Riley had covered his tracks, but clearly not all of them. Next, I started taking meetings. Quiet ones. A coffee here, a late dinner there, an accidental run-in at a conference reception in Berlin where everyone just happened to be. I wasn't pitching. I was listening. What were clients missing? What were they settling for? What had I done differently? Not just in tactics, but in how I made them feel like they weren't being run through a generic playbook? And people talked. Oh, did they talk? Turns out Trevor was already tanking 2 major accounts, and Riley's vision was more like a buzzword salad with no real nutritional value. One CEO told me flat out, "Your old firm feels like a ghost town without you." Another asked if I'd ever considered launching something leaner, smarter, more human. Something with Elena's DNA, he said. So I started sketching. Not a pitch deck, not yet. Just a map. What I could build. Who I could bring in. What I'd do differently now that I'd seen behind the curtain. No announcements. No fireworks. Just quiet progress. They thought they'd erased me. What they actually did was give me a clean slate. And this time, I was holding the pen. He reached out through LinkedIn. Not even an email. LinkedIn, like we were strangers at a networking event, and not 2 people who once spent 12-hour days rewriting pitch decks side by side. I saw the message pop up while I was waiting in line for coffee. "Hey, Elena, let's catch up. I have a proposal I think you'll want to hear." No apology, no ownership. Just that corporate smirk tone Riley always had when he was trying to look generous while saving his own ass. I didn't reply. Not right away. I let it stew for 2 days while I wrapped up a few more key meetings. Spoiler, I was already halfway through building the foundation of my new firm. But then curiosity, or maybe closure, got the better of me. I told him I'd come to the office. His office. The one that used to be mine, in every way except name. Walking back into that building was surreal. The receptionist didn't recognize me, which was fair. Riley had scrubbed me clean from the team site in less than 24 hours after my departure. But a few old colleagues did double takes in the hallway, and one even mouthed, "Oh my God." I smiled and kept walking. He'd booked the big glass conference room, the one we used to call the war room. I could still remember the late nights, the pizza boxes, the whiteboard scribbles that turned into $1,000,000 wins. Now it felt like a museum exhibit curated by someone who didn't understand the original art. Riley stood when I entered, all charm and nerves. "Elena, good to see you. Listen, things have shifted. We're reevaluating our leadership structure and—" I cut him off. Calm, steady. "Let me guess. Clients are walking. The board is anxious. Trevor's burning deals like kindling." He tried to laugh it off, but it died halfway through. We'd like you back. Partner level, equity, full autonomy. I looked around that room one last time. The framed accolades, the fake plants, the carefully curated trophies of a place that once meant something real. Then I looked him in the eye and said, I don't return to places that choose fear and fake power over actual value. No drama, no mic drop, just truth, delivered clean and sharp. He stared at me like he hadn't realized until that moment that I wasn't coming back, that the door he slammed months ago had been welded shut, from my side. The first time I saw the name Eon Strategy printed on the office door, I got chills. Not because it looked sleek, although it did, but because it felt like breathing for the first time after being underwater for too long. I didn't just want a new job or a fresh start. I wanted to build something that didn't require anyone to sacrifice their dignity to succeed. The name came to me late one night. Eon. A nod to longevity, to evolution, to energy. It stood for something bigger than me, and that was the point. I started small. One floor in a co-working space with awful coffee and even worse lighting. But it had whiteboards and Wi-Fi, and for now, that was enough. My first calls weren't to investors. They were to people I trusted. People who had quietly left the old firm months before I was ousted. People who told me in hushed tones, this place isn't what it used to be. I offered them something simple. A chance to build a workplace we didn't want to escape from. No ping-pong tables, no performative wellness initiatives. Just trust, autonomy, and shared ownership. And they came. Not all at once, but steadily. Developers, analysts, creatives, even Patricia, Riley's former assistant, who brought not just her insight, but a moral compass that never wavered. Our focus? Digital transformation and sustainability. Not because it was trendy, but because it was necessary. Companies were flailing, trying to adapt post-pandemic, post-reckoning, post-everything. We weren't promising magic. We were promising alignment. The first client was a mid-sized logistics firm that had been burned by 3 different consultants in a row. When the CEO asked why they should trust us, I said, because we don't measure success by how long we stay, but by how well we leave you stronger. That line stuck. Word spread. By Q3, we were profitable. Not unicorn-level viral, but lean and growing. More importantly, no one cried in the bathroom. No one ghosted Slack. People spoke up in meetings and laughed, genuinely laughed, during lunch breaks. I wasn't just leading a company. I was witnessing a resurrection. Mine. Theirs. And maybe, just maybe, a better way of doing business. It happened on a rainy Tuesday, the kind of day no one expects a victory lap. My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. Client pitch follow-up. Stratton Group. What it should have said was, get ready to blow your past wide open. Stratton was the white whale. A multi-billion-dollar infrastructure conglomerate with a boardroom full of skepticism and an allergy to risk. They'd been married to my old firm for over a decade, calling them irreplaceable in press releases and investor calls. When Eon was invited to pitch, even I assumed it was a formality. Maybe a tactic to pressure my former employer into lowering their rates. But we didn't play it safe. We tore apart Stratton's outdated digital framework and rebuilt it into something bold, sustainable, and fiercely scalable. No buzzwords, no bootlicking, just a battle plan with teeth. At the end of the presentation, their COO, who hadn't blinked for 90 minutes, simply said, "When can you start?" The contract was worth over $1 billion, with a B, one of the largest private sector digital transformation deals that year. It hit the news cycle before the ink dried, and when a reporter asked why Stratton chose us, their CFO replied, "Eon brought us the future. The others brought us recycled promises." That's when the headlines started. The Quiet Architect. Behind tech's boldest pivot. The woman who outsmarted Goliath. One magazine called me the strategist with the sharpest knife and the softest voice, which made me laugh out loud over coffee. And then, poetic justice came knocking. Riley was encouraged to resign after several quarters of client losses and internal turmoil, a terse, forgettable press release. Trevor's name didn't even make it into the story. Word around the industry was he left to pursue personal interests, which is rich, considering he never had professional ones. People started treating me differently, not with flattery, but with a kind of cautious respect. Like they realized, too late, that the person they underestimated was always the one steering the ship. I didn't gloat. I didn't throw shade. I just kept building, because winning wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about proving to myself that I'd always been right to believe I was more than what they gave me permission to be. You know what the most surprising part of all this was? It wasn't the billion-dollar contract. It wasn't watching Riley quietly disappear from the industry or seeing Trevor's LinkedIn turn into a ghost town. No. The real moment, the one that still plays on a loop in my head, happened in a TV studio under two bright lights, across from a journalist who thought she was about to get a juicy revenge story. She leaned forward and asked, "If you could go back to that day you got fired, what would you tell yourself?" And I just smiled. Not a smug one. The kind that comes from surviving something and knowing you didn't let it break you. I said, I wasn't fired. I was freed. Freed from a system that didn't recognize my value, that punished loyalty and rewarded mediocrity masked as legacy. I didn't lose my job. I reclaimed my worth. That clip went viral, not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. It resonated with every person who's ever been told they were replaceable by someone who couldn't hold a candle to their integrity. And here's the kicker. I never tried to get even. I didn't sabotage. I didn't leak receipts. I didn't throw stones. I just did the work. I built something better. I became someone better. Not because they hurt me, but because I chose to heal without permission. Now, I get messages every week from people, especially women, who say my story helped them quit toxic jobs, start businesses, renegotiate their worth. That's the real legacy. Not the Forbes feature, not the fancy office, not even the contracts. It's showing people that you don't have to burn it all down to rise. Sometimes you just walk away, and you build a new world. So if you're reading this, and you're standing at the edge of your own firing, your own betrayal, take it from me. Maybe it's not the end. Maybe it's the beginning. And if you're ready to start your own rebuild, to write your version of this story, subscribe. Stick around, because we're just getting started.